could share with that way we can share with some others who aren't able to be here today. So
awesome. Thank you for asking. I always think about that I never do it. And at the end, I'm like, oh, I forgot to hit that button again. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Okay. So, let me just take us back, and I'm going to be a developer. I don't know why I see so many things on my screen here. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see enough. And I apologize if you cannot. So I'm at Wells Fargo. And one of the things that Wells Fargo has me in there for is to help them champion, if you would, what one of their engineers has built, which I'll call a reference application, microservices reference application. And part of what he's built certainly is intertwined and integrated with Axon, the framework, the server, the EE as well, but mostly Axon framework and server. And part of what they need is the ability to stand these things up faster, right? Like it's one thing to have a reference application, you'd be cutting and pasting and grepping your life away to take it and make it your own. But what if you could, right? So I decided to have a conversation with them to say, well, what if you could? What if you could take a YAML file that represented a domain model? And what if you could take that and give it to something that would know how to turn that into what you wanted, right? So that's what the purpose of this demonstration is today. And I'll do my, and again, questions, if you have them, please don't hesitate to just stop me and ask me to explain whatever I need to. I will do that. So I'll just be brief, right? So we've got a YAML file, and in it we have entities, and as you can imagine, we have attributes and we have relationships with other entities as well as value objects. What was interesting also was when Christian looked at it, it would be nice to be able to provide aliases, right, for the commands and events, depending upon the type. I want to add to, I want to remove from, I want to update, have the ability to sort of name them something different, name them whatever you want, right? So we decided, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and add the ability to alias on these things as well. So, you've got your YAML file, and and again, if you know what you're doing, you can crack open anything, right? Notepad in the editor and start to type away. You could take what we provide and use it as a baseline and sort of intertwine your own things. It can support the notion of enumerated types, value objects. And it also supports other messages, right? Beyond the creates, the reads, the updates, and the deletes, others as well. What we'll see today, actually, the support is for the queries. So I can define in here my own queries, right? I want to find by name. I want to find by this. I want to find by that. If you say, hey, here's the name, here's the, here's the entity I want to be affiliated with, and here's, what my inputs are, and here's what the return value type is, right? Is it one of, is it a list of? It'll figure out how to generate what it needs to do. Okay, so that's sort of the model side. So we got two sides, really three sides of the fence. Doesn't make any sense, right? A three-dimensional fence, right? So we got three sides. One is the model, right? The other has to do with the tech stack itself. Now we support, I think 10 or 11 at this point. Axon will be our 11th or 12th. If you want to generate and target this towards AWS Lambda, to Django, you want to do it for Ruby on Rails, Angular, 11, 12, whatever. You want to do it straight for Spring. You want to use even struts too. Struts, believe it or not, is still out there being used, right? You've got teams that have been using it since like the early 2000s, and they're just sort of fixated on still having to use it. We'll support the ability to generate on that. But today we're going to talk about the Axon tech stack. So in this YAML file, we call it a project as code YAML file. I can tell the platform what I want to do. I want to tell it, use this tech stack. I want to tell it, use this model that I've already published to the platform, right? And again, that model is the one we just looked at. And I also want to tell it other things, simple things, right? What's the name of my application, who authored it, et cetera, et cetera. But I also want to tell it things like Docker, right? Am I using Docker? And if I am, yes, well, here's my credentials. And can you take that thing and put it somewhere for me? Here's my Git credentials as well. And then I also can generate, we think we support up to 10 different CI platforms. I can say here, also generate the YAML for that, so that when I do check it in and I've got a pipeline tied to that Git repo, it'll pull the YAML, it'll execute it, and I'll automatically, my stuff will get built, test, and, archived, and all those sorts of great things. But probably what's most important is these parameters here, right? So I want to tell it about Axon framework, right? I want to tell it the port to listen on, and that's certainly for Spring Boot, et cetera. And all these things in here, just having a conversation, right? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to build? We actually support Mongo as well. It's not here, but we support Mongo both for the entity repository as well as the event store. That stuff all gets enabled and generated and built out for them. They don't have to worry about how to do that. But for today, we're going to use H2. And on the Axon server side, I have Axon server running. I told it is, and it'll certainly do what it needs to do. So I'm not telling you anything you don't already know here, but this is the enablement piece, right? I'm just going to have these things, the choose the falses, the wheres, the whats, and the hows. These are all done in a YAML file, so the developer is kind of distanced, at least initially, from having to know what does that all mean and how do I actually do that on my own. Okay, so let me go ahead and just generate. I mean, I think sometimes it's just pretty neat to just do that, right? So let me go ahead and generate the project. And what we have are really two things. We have a command line interface. Let me go over here. We have a command line interface that we wrote. Let's see here. If you just bear with me for a second while it's in the background generating. We have a command line interface as well as a user interface for this, right? I can just see here, right? So I can issue a whole slew of commands, excuse me, on this. Let me just clear the screen so you can see a little bit better.
And as Stephen goes through this, I'm curious too. Internally, I'll sync back with a number of folks, and Jeannot and I may have some questions on project generation and being of value to a number of, say, open source Axon framework users that we typically engage with. So Allard and team, I'm sure I'll circle back with you on your thoughts around what Stephen's presenting and how we could use this as we engage with our community.
So I have a local instance of the platform running. We keep an instance running in the cloud as well because we have ties in with Circle CI. Circle CI, we wrote an orb, which is really just a way of interjecting project generation into a build process so that a developer can use the orb, give it parameters, and then it will go ahead and invoke it remotely, and then it will, again, it will do a git in terms of committing the code where they want it, and they're off and running and doing what they need to do. But again, we have a straightforward command interface. We can have a conversation with it. We can look at the tech stacks that are available to us. We can look at the models that have already been published, et cetera. We also have, again, the generation's probably already done. I'll circle back to a second. We also have a user interface for it. So if we want to just do all that stuff here, we can as well, right? We can look at the command line. We can look at this tech stacks that are available. We can look at the models and we can do the generation from here, but I tend to use it from the command line interface nonetheless. Okay, so this is already done generating, right? So I'm going to go to Eclipse and allow me just to close these here if you would. I'm going to do that. So I was asked to take a look at the Axon initializer because it sounds like we're doing the same things, right? Hey, we're starting a project, we're getting something going. But I use the initializer, and I think you guys would know, these are sort of the components that you get. You get sort of a stubbed out demo application. I don't know what's in the application properties, probably just a couple things. Oh, nothing, that's fine. And you got a test class, right? Again, it's just sort of laying down the tracks. You get a pom.xml, depending upon what you said you were going to do, and you're going to try to pull in. All right, so let me go and show you what we generate. Bear with me here. I'm going to have to refresh this directory so we can see what it dumped in there. Okay. So it did generate the Circle CI config, but it generated, a lot, right? So we're going to generate all the Kotlin based on what we saw, right? I mean, I can step through these. You guys aren't going to mind me doing that, right? So these are all the things I said I needed. They're all going to find their way in here as commands. They're all, as events as you would expect. They're going to find their way into places dealing with entities. We've got named queries already being generated, et cetera. Like it's this is what you would expect if you had a model and you went to the initializer. You could say, hey, start here instead, right? Here's my context. I know you don't know anything about me without my model, but if I gave you a model, we got a lot of detail to steal as well, right? The value objects, we've only got one, et cetera, right? And then we've got our queries in here as well, right? So we've got all that Kotlin that got generated. that's all fantastic. Then we also have all this Java that gets generated, right? The aggregates, the configurations that we need to get things up and running, right? Controllers up front, right? The company REST controller, and that's going to go ahead and, you know, take inputs and have a conversation. You know, it's using completable futures. It's going to have a conversation with this other thing we call a delegate that kind of sits between the Axonish stuff and, you know, the actual HTTP stuff, and it sort of does, you know, certain things, you know, on behalf of the developer. It may do validation because we generate all the validation as well. So, you know, this is what we do, right? So we're generating all this for the purpose of being able to just start here, right? I can create, read, update, delete, fire off all those queries. There are subscribers that are being generated. There are listeners if they want to instantiate those. If that makes sense, all that stuff is there so that now I can just start, right? I can start consuming Axon framework as is. And then if I want to learn more about, hey, what is actually going on? Again, you know, we work with Christian. We'd love to work with you guys. What does it make sense, right? First pass to be able to generate, and then we certainly can mature what we generate based on options, based on the audience, as to adding more and more to it, right? But we thought initially, you know, from a core perspective, this is a great place to start, right? So I'll come out here, and again, I know I'm talking a lot here, and I apologize. Let me go ahead and run this thing. See here. I'd rather do it from the command line. You'll forgive me for that. I can't see here. Hold on a second. I think that's right. I don't know why I always forget the dash and the slash and something else in there. I think that's going to invoke it. Okay, so now this is going to do what we expect it to do. It's going to run, right? It will go out and find that I've got Axon server running locally, and, you know, we'll see this thing spin up. Then I can go to Swagger. I can start throwing commands at it to test it out. We actually generate a test harness using JUnit. That's in here somewhere. Excuse me for all this clicking. I apologize. Right. So I can invoke the testing from the UI because it's actually got a test controller that will go ahead and invoke them all to start. Right. So it'll go ahead and create a couple. Right. The creation notifies something that, you know, hey, I just created. The notifier, you know, subscriber sees that. It says, hey, now I can go ahead and query for it. So all that stuff, you know, we're going to go ahead and generate for the user as well, right? All that stuff is going to be in here, and we do that for each entity as well. Let's see where we are here. This all looks familiar to you guys. I'm sure you've seen this 8 billion times, right?
Every day.
Every day, right? It's in your sleep. It's amazing how many times we do things.
One line is off, it shows immediately. You're immediately like, hey, what's that? Yeah.
I know. I was almost concerned to not show this. I'm like, oh, they might see something, but yeah, something just choked. I don't know what it was. It could be my H2 connection. I don't know. Cannot parse timestamp. No idea what that is. Let me go out here and see if this thing's even connecting. Let's see. There's data already in the database. Let's go ahead and see if there is. Yeah, there is. All right. So I've already got an entity in there, and just went ahead and pulled it out. I did it probably a week ago or so, and it's just a Wells Fargo. So I can stay here and I can play. Right now, if we want to generate a user interface on top of it, we have not, because I find there's just too many flavors. People are usually happy to see it to play with, but they usually toss it in the trash because they want to do their own thing. They don't like the way it look and feel. I can't dictate that. But we do have, you know, at least the core capabilities in there, whether it's server side or it's all up in JavaScript, to be able to get things, right? To be able to get one and present it in a form, or to be able to display it in a list, and then they can sort of take it and manipulate it. So what I just showed you is a tool that we use. So when we step into an engagement, like at Wells Fargo or somewhere else where they want us to do work, right? They take this idea and turn it into something, or take this old idea and morph it into this other thing. We use the platform, right? Because we need a competitive advantage, and we need a lift, right? So that we can get started and get down the road faster. If we include it in the engagement, you know, from a price and cost perspective, clearly we can do it for a lot cheaper because we've got so much that's getting generated. We don't have to develop ourselves. But I was sort of asked to sort of compare and contrast, you know, that with the initializer, but I didn't. You know, I think you saw that it's just different, right? One of them is sort of initializing, and the other one is instantiating, if you would, the model itself. So I'll stop there. If anybody had any questions, I don't mind digging into anything deeper, how we do this and that.